Okay, well, I was thinking we promised in the blurb advertising this session that would reflect on selective episodes from Mark. These are the words that have particular resonance today as we work out what it means to be effective in ministry and mission. So the first passage that I chose was one that I sort of tangentially referred to a much earlier week, and that's Mark chapter 3, verses 13 to 15, which is the story of Jesus sending out the disciples. So I'm going to read it and make some comments on it as I do so. So Mark tells us, this is chapter 3, verse 13, that Jesus went up the mountain and called to him those whom he wanted, and they came to him, which is absolutely where we were, whatever week it was. Was it week 2 when we talked about disciples and the calling of disciples? But I think one of the key things that strikes me in that is that Jesus is depicted going up the mountain. And whenever he goes up a mountain in Mark, which he does later on as well, of course, on more than one occasion, that's it's a kind of metaphor almost for prayer, meditation, quietness, reflection, spending time intentionally with God. And I think for me, just thinking about that, it reminded me of the importance of actually all those things in terms of mission and ministry today, that it starts not with activism, but actually with reflection and meditation, and particularly with reminding ourselves in the presence of God of what is the heart of our faith and our commitment. I read something just this afternoon, actually, that a friend sent to me, who said that he thought we were being called back today to the experience of the desert fathers and mothers. I know some of them were real weirdos because, they lived in caves and ate funny food, and one of them even spent, I can't remember how many decades, at the top of a pole, and, this kind of thing. But I think there's a lot of truth in that, and an important lesson here that going up the mountain, whatever that means physically for you and I today, is where appropriate decisions are made. And then Jesus, of course, called to him those whom he wanted, which is really good news when you see the rabble that they were. Because one of the themes that comes out repeatedly in Mark is that Jesus is on the side of those who are oppressed and marginalized. Not just them, but they're very important. It's often said in comparing Mark's gospel with Luke's gospel that Luke is the one who has most to say about Jesus caring for the marginalized and the disadvantaged. But actually, when you look at the percentage of Mark that's taken up with that, I think that relative to how much emphasis there is in Luke, Luke is more eloquent in describing it, but Mark certainly has that as a key theme as well. And then, surprisingly, Jesus calls people to him. They don't have to put in an application, which I think is really important. And actually, when I think about it, has an important lesson for our churches and how we welcome people in, because I think in some ways we still look from the outside as if we are making people apply to get in, and if you tick the right boxes, we'll have you. Whereas Jesus opened the door for whoever, and they were a rough-shod rabble, weren't they? He appoints 12, whom he also named apostles, which of course tells us something, because the Greek word from which the word apostle comes, apostello, is a verb that's about being sent out. So he called them in, actually to say, well, actually, you're in the wrong place here. You're supposed to be out there. Which, of course, you don't need me to tell you in missional terms, we've not been really very good at that. We've been much better at trying to drag people in. We haven't succeeded. Maybe because we've lost that sort of apostolic vision of needing to be out there rather than calling people to be in with us. He calls them apostles to be with him. Again, the emphasis on this being present with God, being present with yourself, being present with God. So reflection, meditation, learning is central to this, and to be sent out twice in one sentence. I mean, that says it's important, I think, to proclaim the message, is what it says in this translation, NRSV, that I'm reading from. The word there, proclaiming, is translated preach in some other versions. It's actually a Greek word, kyrusso, which was used in the context of the first century. It was the word when an important announcement was made, usually by a herald sent out from the emperor or whoever to announce an important thing. Usually very important things, like the accession of a new emperor, or a big battle that had been won, or occasionally one that had been lost. But something of that magnitude within the life of the empire, something serious, and inevitably, because there was a bit of spin on these announcements, more or less good news. And to have authority, Mark writes, they were sent out over the demons, to cast out demons. So demons, of course, in Mark's gospel covers a whole variety of different things, which can be a kind of metaphor for somebody who's seriously ill. It can be more specific than that, as to somebody who's got a diagnosable kind of ailment or something going on, or it can be a more generic kind of thing, just somebody whose life is in a mess. So actually, here we have, I think, what we're all aspiring to, which is why I connected this immediately with mission and ministry, because we all aspire to spending time in reflection, meditation, on the mountaintop, as it were. We all aspire to the kind of being sent out missionally. We all aspire to preaching good news, though we might ask the question, how has good news become for the wider culture so much bad news? And we all aspire to have that kind of authority that is exhibited as Jesus confronts issues of various kinds, whether they're healing or other kind of maladies that affect people and so on. So here for me was, the kind of blueprint of discipleship, but also I think something we all aspire to for that reason. And it's just a challenge. My second passage, which I'll stop here, but a second passage looks at the opposite end of this, which is the reality of how it often is when we try to be, or we hope to be, good disciples following this kind of paradigm.